Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back to another episode of Inspiring Possible. So I am so excited, guys. I have the first guest of the year, in case you've been listening to some of the solo episodes and you're like, Christy, when is somebody cool going to come back on the show and share their awesome story and give me insights for my life? Well, wait no further, because today is the day that we're going to be diving in to some really good conversation that I hope will help you start your year off in a good way. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I get scrolling on social media or just meet my friend in the grocery store and I think to myself, man, they seem like they have the perfect life. On the outside, they look like they have it together. It looks like they never have a bad day. Or then you start scrolling on their profile on social media and you say, man, this is really glamorous. I mean, if I could only live a day in their life, because my life just seems a mess. But what's crazy about that is somebody could actually look at your life and think it looks pretty perfect, but you might feel that life's a mess. So whether if you feel like your life's a mess or a little mess or a big mess, or you're just dealing with a lot of feelings about yourself or about your life, then I hope you tune in as we start this conversation today, because I think my guest is really going to help you just figure out ways to look at your story and look at your life and maybe give you some hope of how there can be another side to it when you move through things. And so I'm really excited to have Matt Gerlach. Did I say it right?
You did.
Yeah, woo-woo, on the show. I was just telling Matt how, if you've listened to this, that I just struggle sometimes with last names, but I'm working on it this year. So one down, however many more to go. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here and to talk with you this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit, because I know that you are somebody that not only has been successful in a lot of areas of your life, from helping others to also just growing businesses, but I know that sometimes in that journey, it hasn't all been perfect. So maybe you could dive in and tell me a little bit about kind of why you're passionate about sharing your message.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm passionate about sharing my message because I have a story that I'd like to share with people. And I think it's something that is resonant and that can help a lot of people. Rewind till about 2010, and I started my own business. I had always been a top performer in my profession, but I'd also never really been in a profession that brought me full joy. Like something was always wrong. I looked around and I saw other people really happy in their work, and I just never was. I never really thought that was for me. I guess.
You're like, what's wrong with me? Why are they happy? Or did you just think this is not it?
No, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I've always thought there was something wrong with me. Growing up, I didn't have friends for many years. There was a lot of, I was a sad person. I was depressed. I had a lot of behavioral problems when I was younger. And I just kind of always thought something was wrong with me. And then so I started this business kind of like mindlessly. I guess I knew I didn't want to work for somebody else. And somebody kind of held my hand and said, hey, go do this and you'll be great at it. So I started a consulting business in the baby product market.
Really?
Yes. Very, very,
okay.
Very, very niche. But I worked for some brands and anybody that has kids, Skip Hop, Aiden and A. There's a couple of, these are huge companies for anybody that has.
So you had worked for those brands before.
Yeah.
So you had some specialized knowledge. So it wasn't just hey, let's go to consulting in this space. Okay.
No, yeah. So I started in this business when it was totally blowing up around 2010. It was just an underdeveloped market that there hadn't been innovation brought to. And so I started this consulting business and I quickly realized that I was crumbling. I couldn't set boundaries. I could not advocate for myself. I was making my clients millions of dollars and good for them, but I couldn't advocate for the worth that I was bringing. I needed help in my business and I couldn't get myself to a place where I was having my needs taken care of. I didn't know that I mean, I was just used to saying yes to everything. And I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. I completely started obsessing about it. And literally, I was in the doctor every week, like obsessing about my health. I thought I might have testicular cancer because I thought I felt something. I learned that what I was doing was that I was feeling so horrible that I thought it had to be from a physical health problem. I had no clue that mental health could make somebody feel the way that I was feeling. So I was living in New York at the time. My partner and I moved to Los Angeles during this frantic business craze period. There was so much change going on. I had no idea that people crumbled under stress. I just
Yeah, you're
thought
just thinking like there must be something physically wrong with me.
Yeah.
What I wrote down over here is almost like saying yes to everything was at a cost to yourself, like physically, mentally, emotionally.
I just didn't know that mental health mattered. I didn't know I mattered. I didn't know that people's feelings mattered. I thought it was just like, I mean, this sounds crazy to say it, but it's like, I thought I was put on this earth to make money for myself, to survive and to struggle. I just didn't know that there was like, I didn't know there was supposed to be happiness mixed in with this. I didn't know what it
Yeah.
felt like to be really happy. I mean, I had a lot of friends that I'd made over the years. Once I hit college and high school, I started making a lot of friends. Alcohol always made the party funner. So I had fun. You know, when I wasn't out drinking with friends, I was working at a job or I was working on school. You know, I mean, there was always something that I was doing. I don't think in my 20s I ever just sat down for even a second and like looked out the window. You know, I mean, I didn't know how to have joy in my life.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like, and tell me if this is right or not, but like it almost sounds like you thought happiness was for everybody else, but maybe not for me.
Yeah, I thought something was wrong with me. And like, I remember, like, this is really kind of, I'm not going to say painful. I'm okay with it. But I remember like during college meeting people and saying things to them like, hey, like, I'm really needy or I'm really difficult to get along with. If you don't want to be my friend, like, it's okay. You know, like that's like the low self-esteem that I had about myself. I thought that something was just really wrong with me and I didn't deserve the same privileges that other people did.
And just hearing you talk, I do get private insights to a lot of people's journeys and thoughts and experiences. And I know that people listening right now, there is people that is resonating with this because I do think that, we all sometimes think that maybe that's for somebody else, that's not for me. But just to hear you say, like, even for you, you just thought, I'm just supposed to be here to get through. But all these other things that I may see other people experiencing, or if I see other people that seem to have some joy in life, it almost sounded like that wasn't something that you ever expected for your life.
No, no, not in the same way. Like seeing people intrinsically like be happy, just laughing like together, I didn't think that was really for me. I thought
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Well, how did things change for you? Because it sounds like I know now kind of a little bit of behind the scenes that we're going to talk about in a minute, but of kind of what you do and how you help people. But how did things change for you? And where was that
So,
change point?
um, we moved to LA and I spent the first night in our new town in the hospital, checked into Cedar Sinai. I was admitted overnight for observation for a possible heart attack. I thought that I was having a heart attack when we were at our apartment unpacking. And that really sent me on a healing journey. I knew I needed to do something. And I started seeing tons of different doctors and therapists, and no one really knew what was wrong with me. And then about 9 months later, I started having panic attacks while driving. And that debilitated me from driving. Like I was just marveling, like at like I could, fly around the world. And that's kind of what you were saying earlier. People were like, I just can't really buy that anything's that wrong with you because look at you, you're in New York all the time, you're traveling and like I mean, I remember being like in a taxi cab going from JFK to the city in New York and being like, this is just insane that I can like get myself from my home in LA to LAX across the country and live a normal life. Like I'm normal right now, but I couldn't drive to the grocery store and I'm in my hometown. So I Ubered all over. And this panic attack thing, the point was that it really debilitated me enough where I had to do something about it. It wasn't only that like my driving was compromised, it was my self-worth was just in the toilet. Like on the holidays, I took an Uber to be with my family, and I just got in the car and I was just like just a ball of just sadness. I couldn't believe like that. I remember being in the freeway looking at other families, like, oh, people are in the car, and here I was by myself, in an Uber with some smelly Uber on Christmas Eve, crying.
Yeah.
I continued on my healing journey, and it was through therapy, our couples therapist, my partner and I were in couples therapist, where we had a session where she was really trying to push me to like express what I needed to David, my partner, and I couldn't do it, and I just like buckled down in tears, and we were all like, "Oh, like this is what's going on. Like you don't think that you're deserving of having needs." And I never, like, my needs were never good for anybody else. At home, there was a lot that happened that made me feel that my needs were excessive and something was wrong with me for having needs. And then I had no friends at school for about 4 years. So I just thought that, like, when I needed something, I would have to experience severe loss for that.
Well, and I mean, just at this point in your story, I'm just thinking, that a lot of times we can think, right, that maybe that person, especially if you don't feel like your needs are deserving, you can think your partner or whoever you're in a relationship with, or even your friends, their needs are deserving, but like a completely not thinking that it almost sounded like for you, did you think that their needs deserve to be met? Other people
Oh
in your
yeah,
lives? Yeah.
yeah.
But for you, it was like, no, I mean, mine don't matter. Maybe mine don't deserve to be met.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what was happening. And like, it was like I was crumbling because of it. Like, I guess, like in your 20s, I mean, I was drunk most of my 20s or working like crazy. So, I just never had a chance to like slow down. And my relationship, David was like the first like real serious relationship like this and it was, I mean, and we've been together for 11 years, and there was growth being required of me. You can't be hiding your needs in a relationship and have it be good. And but yeah, I mean, I just never knew that. Like, I wouldn't even say that I was like, there was no consciousness to hiding the needs. It was that I just didn't think I had needs. My job was to go with the flow and to not rock the boat. I didn't know anything about like having disagreements that didn't really lead to blow ups and yelling and screaming and things like that. So I was just always afraid of like having a controversy.
Mm. So then that kept you from expressing really
Yeah.
anything.
The
So
way, I
then when
mean,
all that stays inside for so long and not getting expressed, then, I guess it got to the point where for you, it was having physical implications. And then it sounded like it even impacted your day-to-day life to where you couldn't really interact in life the way that you would have wanted to.
oh, yeah. I mean, I would, you're the expert on this, but like, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this before. That's what I'm kind of like interested in what you have to say. But the way that I would describe it, I'm a big Oprah fan. And she
I
says
love
something.
Oprah, man.
Who doesn't, right? She says something like, I think this is like almost verbatim, like, wake up calls will keep happening and it'll just keep hitting you upside the head until you finally pay attention. So undoubtedly there was wake up calls that had happened my whole life. I remember like being with friends, like, and just being like, one example, I mean, I was always, very financially successful in college. I mean, not very, but compared to everybody else, I worked very hard. I worked at a hospital. I was making $1,000 every 2 weeks, where most people were like working an hour a day, making a lot less than that. So we'd be at the bar and I'd buy drinks. And I remember like stuff like that and being like, I don't want to buy this person a drink. Like, they're not nice to me, but like I had no idea how to say no to that. So I just did it. But I remember the feeling of agitation that would happen from that. But
Like that, I don't want to, this is not something I want to do, but I feel like it's something that I'm just supposed to do.
yeah, like I'm supposed
Hmm.
to, my needs, I wouldn't have been able to say my needs don't matter, but I didn't know how to. It was like, I mean, it's like, boiling water and just like putting the lid on and trying to keep it contained. And that
Yeah.
works
Well,
for
and one of the things that I've always heard is, and again, it's kind of like what I said earlier, but like if you don't ever figure out a way to express some of this and it is repressed, it comes out some way. Whether it comes out in physical somatic symptoms, which is what you're explaining, where you're having panic attacks or you're having, elevated blood pressure. And you're right, not everybody thinks until you hit this kind of experience, because maybe you've never been taught this, or you've never experienced it, or you've never been exposed to the fact that mental health and like emotional health is super important, and it can, go into your physical life, because those emotions stored over a long period of time and never been able to process or heal or escape. I call it escape from yourself. Then it does. It just kind of sits there waiting for some way to get out. And then sometimes that way to get out is full blown panic attacks, where it's hard to move around in life because there's this perpetual fear that's present because it doesn't know how to express itself. And also I think it's hard. One of the things I'm working on this year. So look, I might do this on the side, on this other side, sit on the other side of the seat as a therapist, but I also get my own therapy, and I haven't figured life out completely yet, Matt. I just got to go ahead and give my disclaimer here. But the reality is, if we don't have a way to process some of the things that have created these belief systems that are within us, that I'm not deserving, or I'm not worthy, or, why do I matter? Then it will get expressed in your life in other ways over time. So so I guess this was the turning point where you and your partner were sitting in couples counseling, and they're like, hey, your needs are deserving, and this sounds like a core belief issue that's causing all these other things in your life. How did you take the next step towards healing to find a way through that?
So I was also in yoga teacher training at the time, which was
really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And that was a huge, huge help. I mean, I don't know where I would be right now if it wasn't for that, because that was like, me sitting in a room with 10 other people and honestly, vulnerably discussing feelings. And I never had been in a room like that and had, like a handful of other people express that they were also hurting and they also had emotions. And like a day after the couples therapy session, I had the yoga teacher training. And then the next day after that, I saw my family and I tried to express a need. And I'm not saying I did it effectively, but we had a big blow up and didn't talk for a few years because we didn't know how to communicate about that. We'd never been able to, as a family, really like communicate too effectively about that. And, it was very hard for me. It was very hard, I'm sure, for everybody involved. But it was probably the most important thing that allowed me time to heal.
Like the important step it took for you to then say, okay, this does matter to me. This is the boundary that I'm setting. Maybe, like you said, it didn't go over the way that in hindsight I would have liked it to go, or maybe I didn't articulate whatever, but it almost sounds like it was a step in you taking back you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or finding you to say like, okay, my needs matter, and this is what I'm putting down.
And that feels very hard. And I think that's a really, really hard thing to think about, like not having your family anymore. But like when I think about like who I was, this would have been end of 2019. So, 4 years ago or so. I couldn't go on any longer. I was having suicidal ideation. I would have literally bet $1 million at this point that I wouldn't have lived to see my 40th birthday. Like I felt so sick inside and just, I just couldn't. It was like I was just being pulled in two different directions. And it's not necessarily, I guess I want to also be clear. I grew up in a family with a lot of love as well. I wouldn't say that anyone was really causing me grief or trying to hurt me or anything at this point. It was really that I just didn't know any better. Like one of the example, like, Christmas, like, at this point I was like, in my mid 30s, a single gay man, no kids. And like, I'm living in New York, flying home for Christmas. I'm spending literally like $3,000 doing this. And, like for what? No one really cared, they're like, and if I wouldn't have come home, no one really would have cared. I was told that no one really would have cared. It was on me to do that. And that's the thing. Like I was holding myself to a higher caliber than what anybody else was holding me to. But that's what trauma does. Eve Ensler. Do you know who Eve Ensler is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she wrote the Vagina Monologues, and she wrote a book called The Apology. And it was a book to her father, who very, very, very maliciously abused her as a child. And she's like writing this book to, as if it's him writing to her. And she said, like, as her father, like, when I'm done with you, you will be harder on yourself than I could have ever been on you. And I mean, I just have chills saying that, because
That gave me goosebumps.
that's how abuse works. When you're taken advantage of on a date, you bottle that up and you think that you deserve that, and you just lose all perspective, and it stays with you until it doesn't. And my story, I mean, I think about this a lot. Like, I'm grateful for, there's really nothing that I would change or that I wish was different. I really believe that, people that face adversity are the people that end up changing the world. So stay tuned on that. But I'm grateful that this happened. And I went on this healing journey. I started somatic therapy. My partner and I were still in couples therapy. I had a regular therapist. I tried neurofeedback, which I'm still not exactly quite sure what was. But
there's all different kind of things out there. But yeah.
And continued with yoga. And I read, I mean, oh my God, I read so much and just like learned so much. And there were, growing up, I had a lot of behavioral issues. And I know I didn't make it easy for my parents, but I found Oprah wrote a book with Dr. Bruce Perry called What Happened to You, I believe it is. And that book just really opened up my eyes. Like, I was acting out and I was having problems because I was very much suffering.
Yeah.
And I think now we know that, like, when kids have behavioral problems at a young age like that, we know that it's because something's going on. And I don't think that, like, that wasn't in practice when I was a child.
Yeah. Well, and look, I think still it's not always known today. Like, I always say that kids, especially younger, because that's where I actually started my journey in helping in the helping profession, was more children and teens, even though I eventually moved on to older, working with adults and things. But, one of the things that I always realized with kids is that, there is this part where they don't always, adults don't either. That's why we're talking about this, to realize that, like, we don't always get the handbook on how to communicate well, or how to set boundaries, or how to take care of your mental emotional health. And as kids, we just always don't know how to express what's going on. We can't sit down and have a conversation. And sometimes there's not, some people have safe spaces, some people don't have safe spaces to sit down and even verbalize if they could. And so kids, they express a lot of things through behaviors, or through outbursts, or through poor, what I call emotional regulation, where they go from 10 to 1, and they haven't developed all of those skills yet, and sometimes never do, if they're never taught or never shown or never shared or never given an example of how to do that. And so you're right. So then you start creating these inward beliefs, especially as kids, because you are looking to the outside world to shape your beliefs about not only yourself, but others and the world around you. And so if those experiences that you're having are making you turn inward and say, well, maybe it's my fault, then, or maybe it's about me, or maybe I'm the one that's broken, or I'm the one that's wrong, or I'm the one that's not enough, and everybody else is, then you live your life with those belief systems ingrained within you. And then it causes you to not be able to connect with the world sometimes, or connect with others, or connect with yourself in a way that actually is true. So that's what I wanted to ask you. What did you learn about yourself that was actually like a belief about yourself that you had that was actually a lie?
I mean, where do I start?
Yeah.
No, I mean,
because it sounds like what happened during your healing journey that I'm starting to hear is that there was a lot of lies. I mean, I'm just going to say lies, or you can use a different word. That's the one that's coming to my head right now, about yourself, that maybe I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, this is not whatever. So I'm curious to know, what did you realize was actually the truth? Maybe that's the better way to ask that.
I mean, going back to the feeling broken, or like I was broken, I mean, that all became unraveled. And there's an author, Glennon Doyle. She's like
Yeah.
kind of my North Star just in this whole journey. Brene Brown was my first author that I found.
So we got Oprah, Brene Brown. We have a lot of good people making the path journey.
I mean, Brene Brown like kind of helped me understand what was going on, like that I had shame, and showed me the path through was vulnerability. And then it was actually on a Brene Brown podcast that Glennon Doyle was a guest on. And Glennon Doyle shows the way forward. And it's like, hi, I know how to do this. You be really honest and vulnerable, and you talk about everything that you have done wrong, and you just learn to love yourself and you help others along the way. And I learned that like no one's perfect. I'm not damaged. And the fact that I'm showing up to even be willing to try to improve myself positions me to be doing better than most people out there.
That is such
especially
a true
men.
Story. Yeah.
I mean, especially men. I think that men are inherently a lot less inclined to admit their faults and be willing to heal. And I think an apology goes a long way, and I think when you don't get an apology, you stop needing an apology. If you're gonna expect an apology from someone that's not gonna give it to you, then you're in for a long life.
A long life.
But
that's why she wrote the book, The Apology. I'm assuming I didn't read it, but I'm assuming it's apology never gotten that.
Yeah.
Then writing it from the perspective of, okay, well then I'll write it as giving my own.
But everything became unraveled. Like, I thought I was the narrative that I always believed was that I'm a selfish person. And it was funny because like, as I started my business, built my team, not to toot my own horn, but I really did like giving
No, it's
gifts.
okay. You can toot it in here because that's part of it, right? That's part of it is also acknowledging ourselves for the great things that we do, right?
Thank you.
And that's the shift, right?
I tried to take care of people. When someone did me a favor, I'd send them a gift. I tried to do as much as I could financially. If someone needed money, I gave it to them. And I started to realize like, who is it? Like, where did this narrative come from for being this selfish person? Like, I really saw a generosity in me that I believed to be atypical. And I just like what really happened, like moving to New York, my family is gay friendly, gay tolerant for sure. There's no weirdness there. So I'm grateful for that. What did I say? I said, while I didn't experience any admonishment for it, I didn't experience very much embracement for it. No one really ever asked like, oh, hey, it must be hard leaving your partner on Christmas or anything. And when I moved to New York, like I saw that like being gay was like not only okay, it was like embraced. I go to dinner parties and people would be like, I want to sit next to the gay guy. Well, they didn't say gay guy, but they'd say, I want to sit next to you because you're so amazing, And then I remember like straight men would like hug me, like they hugged all gay guys. Like there wasn't this like division between gay and straight. And I just like, I looked at all the love that was around me in New York, and I like started to realize like that this whole narrative that I had been telling myself that I was a bad person was all not, I think in your words, it was a lie.
It was a lie. Yeah. Just call it a lie or just not truth. And we all create stories about, I have a book back here. I can't remember who it's by, but it's called Change Your Story, Change Your Life. And we all create these narratives or stories about ourselves and about our life. And sometimes it's learning to challenge those, which I do call lies because I don't think there's any truth to some of those ones that you said earlier. And I don't even know you, right? Like I just believe that humans are inherently, worthy. Now that, and I think we all have a story. So even the person that most people would perceive like, oh no, that's not a good human, Christy. You're being too Pollyanna over here. I would say, well, let's talk about their story and what led them to where they maybe did something that wasn't good or that was perceived as, harmful to others. Everybody has a story and everybody has an experience. And so, but part of it is understanding our story, right? Is what I'm hearing you say, and understanding what are the lies or what are the mistruths or what are the limiting beliefs that hold us back from truly stepping into who we're meant to be.
And, along that line, I believe there's two sides to every story as well. But it's not about blaming either. Like, and that's what I learned through yoga. Like, there's this, like, I think there's a better way to describe this, but it's like my teacher always said both. Like, both. Like, who's wrong, who's right? Both are, it doesn't matter who's right. My partner and I, like, we certainly have our share of, I don't want to undersell us. I mean, we really don't have a lot of controversies. And when we do, like, I always say to him, like, I want you to know, like, I know you're on my side. Like, I know that
Mm-hmm.
we're not against each other. I know that we're both trying for the same goal here. And that just really diffuses it when, like, you stop thinking that everyone's against each other. And to what you're saying, like, I believe that, like, one of the most shocking things I've ever heard in my life, I remember just jaw dropping things, was when I first heard the adage of, it's not your fault what happened to you, but it's your responsibility to heal. I was
Yes, you
like,
say you love that. That's my favorite thing. I remember I heard, listen, this is going to sound crazy, but even as a therapist, I had really not heard that until I was on this mental health panel. And a guy who was sharing his experience with his own, because they had like people that were more of like the therapist, maybe the physician, and then they had like the people that were vulnerable. I'm like, here's my experience, and here's what I've struggled with, and here's what I've learned. And I can remember so clearly this guy saying, he's like, you know what? I realized for my struggles that I was dealing with my own mental health, that it wasn't my fault. That just like it's not a fault for somebody to have, cancer or some uncurable illness or whatever it is that they're facing. He said, but I realized it was my responsibility to figure out what I needed to do to heal and to move through it. So I love how you said that.
you know what? I just thought of something right now too when you said that, because it is kind of the same thing. And I want to be, compassionate here. And I hope I'm not oversimplifying this. But like, my grandmother had cancer, and like, she became a very crabby person because of her
Mm-hmm.
health problems at an older age. So I'm kind of speaking towards that person right now. It's her responsibility to not be a mean person to her family. Like, whether it be mental health, you were abused growing up, or whatever happened, that all gets passed on. And I think that, like, where I was shocked by the "it's your responsibility to heal" word, I'd never seen anybody heal. I had seen people try to bury their trauma, and in response, it goes somewhere, and it's taken out on your friends and your family. And I can say for myself, I don't think I really ever did too much harm to my partner, but when I was like at the lowest of my lows, like really during these 3 years where I wasn't speaking to my family, I remember one day where I was like, we had an argument, or a disagreement, even not even an argument. And I turned on myself so bad that I was really afraid that I would end up hurting myself, because we got into this argument, and I mean, not even argument, disagreement. And like, I just didn't, I was so used to being wrong, but at the same hand, like, neither of us were wrong. And it must have been really hard for him to watch someone he loves be afraid to hurt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's my responsibility to do my darndest to make sure that I'm minimizing that or
Or to
eliminating
ask
that.
for, and I think about asking for help, right? And again, I don't want to like, well, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, Christy, that cancer comparison probably wasn't the best, because I do know nobody wants that. And nobody, I don't want to minimize that on anybody, because I know it's a hard thing. But I do think it's a responsibility to ask, to say, hey, I need help, and mental, when you're struggling, like you said, in turning inwardly, or you're having this big argument, it may be saying, you know what, I'm not okay with me right now, and I need help in that, or this is what I need, or I need the space, or, I don't know what I need to heal, but I might need to go ask somebody, or I may need to ask somebody to just come sit with me in this, because I can't figure it out right now. And I just want somebody to sit with me through the pain that I'm experiencing until I can move through it to the other side. And so you're right. I mean, there's so many things in our life that nobody asks for. I think about just some of the tragedies that exist and just a part of living, right? But it is trying to figure out, okay, how do I take this thing that maybe I didn't ask for, or how do I take this experience that I'm having that's not making me feel good, and how do I find a way to either heal or ask questions or to get help or support? And that's can be a very scary first step for people, especially if you're not used to asking for help and you're the one that's giving help to everybody else.
I'm glad you stopped on that too, because just to be clear, I was not envisioning anybody healing themselves on these. It is the asking for help that I was alluding to.
Oh, me too. Just to clarify, disclaimer.
Like I wasn't able to fix myself when I was turning on myself. It was my responsibility to get myself in therapy and to work with, to go to double sessions so I could work through these things. But I think like even for some of us that are in therapy already, it's being vulnerable and being honest. And I remember like, the first like, 10 hard things that I had to admit to somebody else. A therapist. It took years to be able to talk about things like, oh, like I drink too much when I'm, going through hard times. And then like, that's what I mean. It's like, you need help, but you need to be able to be willing to be honest with yourself because people aren't
hard. And that's hard. Look, I'm just going to go ahead and throw myself out there too. It's hard even for me. I remember when I started my own therapy, I'm like, you know what? I ask people to be vulnerable with me all the time. And you're right. Sometimes it takes a while because being vulnerable requires courage, just like Brene Brown, it requires bravery. It's not something that's easy. And what's interesting is that we all do think, I used to always think, man, if I could put everybody in a room together, they'd all realize that they're struggling with the same things, but they feel so isolated in it because they have no clue that the person just before them came in and had some of the same exact struggles as them. But vulnerability is hard because I think sometimes we're worried about how people respond. We're worried that if people knew my truth, would they still sit there and try to help me? If people only knew what I'm feeling or thinking or some of the hard things that I've experienced, then there can be a lot of feelings of shame or guilt or regret or anger or you name it. I mean, the feeling gamut, you can find the feeling word you want to interject in there, but it's just so hard to sometimes just be able to be vulnerable. And being honest and being vulnerable are two different things. You can be honest, but to be really vulnerable means to say like, let me just really show you what's on the inside or what I'm struggling with or what I go to. And that can be scary for people. But what did you find happened for you, Matt, when you leaned into vulnerability?
Everything changed, everything. Like, I don't feel shame. I don't think that you forever escape shame completely, but like, like one of the examples, my partner and I, my business and my business got very lucrative as I healed and I learned my value, was able to ask for it, set boundaries, and be able to align my strengths with what I was spending my time on, unplug on the weekends, and to really take care of myself. My business's revenue shot up to north of $1 million, and for that, even in of itself, I was shameful about making money. And then we bought a beautiful home here in Los Angeles, and that was probably like where I felt the vulnerability really come into full focus because we had friends over and they were congratulating us, and like him and I talked about it, and we were like, he felt the shame too. And we told our friends, we're like, we just want to be honest. We have some shame about this. And like everyone's like, oh my God, you should be so proud of yourself, That's just an example. I think that like vulnerability is a muscle, like setting boundaries is a muscle. A lot of these things are muscles. Don't like practice, vulnerability for the first time, telling your deepest, darkest secrets. You can, but like start with something honest, like, hey, like, when somebody first, serves you dinner, how do you like that? Well, I actually don't eat beef. Like, be honest about things like that. Like, and you start to learn that like, that the vulnerability brings you closer with people. And if it doesn't, you really don't want those people in your life. It takes a while to learn that. I'm not trying to oversimplify.
And it takes a while to go through the pain of like, that person doesn't like me. I'm a recovering people pleaser, Matt. I'm still in work in progress. Okay. But like, sometimes that perceived, I call it perceived rejection. Cause like you said, if they're not okay with it, then they maybe shouldn't be in your sphere, anyways, if you're being your most vulnerable and authentic self and they're not accepting of that. But it is a hard thing to do, to be like, okay.
Sure is.
Peace.
It's worth
Grace
it,
be
though.
with you.
And none of this stuff is meant to be done alone. Whether it be like a coach, online courses, a therapist, mastermind group, whatever it is. We need support. And I don't think that I would be anywhere near where I'd be 10% of my journey right now if I would have tried to do this alone. Like there's just no way. Books help,
Yeah.
podcasts help, but you need to,
Well,
I
and
mean,
would you say that where you're at today is a world's difference from that person that was having panic attacks and having trouble getting around?
oh, just complete night and day. I don't have anxiety and depression the way that I mean, I don't have it at all. I don't feel it at all. I also know life isn't linear, and I'm quite certain there's going to be things that come up. But I think the reason, I mean, I think anxiety is worrying about the future. That's an oversimplified
No, it's
definition.
right. It's about the future. Yeah.
And while there's going to be things that happen, I also know that I'm going to be able to handle those things in a way that I didn't before. Like, where now I believe I'll be able to handle it. I believe that they're not going to be catastrophic. So, whatever. And I also live my life a lot more for today. We shouldn't be living our lives where, I mean, I know this is morbid, but like if we do die a lot sooner than we hope, we should be living our lives today to where that's not as horrific as it would be if we aren't enjoying our
Yeah.
lives and preparing for the future only.
Well, you must be in my book list right now because I'm deep diving into really my goal this year was more presence of just how to be present and in the present, right? And I'm reading The Power of Now. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
Yep, Eckhart Tolle.
Along with another book that kind of is talking about how do you live in the moment and how do you not get too caught up about tomorrow. It doesn't mean that we can't have goals and dreams and aspirations, but sometimes I do think we live life so forward in the forward of what could happen, what could go wrong, whatever it is, that we miss living in the now. And so finding a way to live now is a game changer, but it's not easy to do when part of your mind has lived in the future and fear of the future actually as well for a period of time. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you this, Matt, because I know that there's one question I want to ask you. And then I know that right now I want you to dive a little bit into the mastermind that you do, because I know from your experience, you now help people. But I am curious, would what would one piece of advice, if you could go back to younger you and just give yourself, it could even be a word of encouragement or one thing that you feel like you've learned that you wish you could go and tell younger you now? What is that thing that you would tell you?
I'm very careful to I don't want to make somebody feel they have to do what I've done, like as a healing modality, but I'm going to give like a couple of suggestions. And I hope
please.
that there's like a variation of this. That there's three things I would say in no particular order. Well, I'm going to make them in order of things that I think have worked the most for me. Journaling. Journaling has helped me more than probably anything in the world. And I think that a lot of people get intimidated by that. Journaling can be like two sentences on the back of a napkin or something, and you can throw it away, even you can burn it. But getting the thoughts out of you, you could even talk to the bathroom mirror in the morning. But like getting those thoughts out of you and feel this is all to allow you to feel your feelings, to acknowledge your feelings. Journaling, getting the thoughts out of you somehow, talking to somebody, some form of getting the thoughts out of you. Meditation, I know that's a tall order for some. I know I don't meditate perfectly. Like there is no perfect. It's just you sit there and listen to music for a second. It could be 30 seconds, but I know it's a tall order if people haven't meditated, but I do it every day for 10 minutes.
But like you said earlier, it's a practice. It's a muscle.
It's a practice. And a lot of people say that 10 minutes is not enough. I do 10 minutes every day. I've done that for probably 8 years. It's enough for me. And walking, exercise, something. I mean, a walk is great. A walk is moving the body, getting some fresh air. I think that we overcomplicate things so much. And it's like, I have to find a therapist. Like, I have to find an expensive therapist. There's a wait list. Well, sure. But like, go for a walk then. There's a lot of options. I mean, and all three of these things I mentioned are virtually like free. I guess paper.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, now we live in such a day and time, really, truly. I mean, we have this podcast that people can get, where people can listen to different things to gain insights to it. And these are things that you can do where, like you're talking about journaling, meditation, walking. It's crazy. I will even do some meditation sometimes and some therapy sessions. And people will be like, literally, what did you do, Christy? And I'm like, we just sat here for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you could do it at home. if you want it, and it really does help you reset and just ground yourself and try to find a way to escape the mind for just a little bit to
That's the name of the game.
give yourself a break. So, well, awesome. So would you tell younger you, or those are the strategies you would tell younger you? Is there any words that you would tell younger you?
I mean, just that it'll be okay. Like life is, I'm 40 now. Life honestly never it's better every single day. And that includes my hair is not as full as it used to be, like I have limitations. My legs hurt, all of this stuff. But mentally, like you just get so much stronger, and it all makes more sense if you're willing to grow, especially. I think even if you don't want to grow, you still grow a little bit, and it gets easier the older you get. But if you're really open to, growth, 30s
well, and like you
okay.
said, you're going to grow some way. It's whether it's going to be intentional growth. And what I've found is the more intentional we can be about our growth, then hopefully we can help avoid some of those really uncomfortable growth moments where we're having to grow because of things that we have avoided for so long, right? Is the best way I can say it. Sometimes when you avoid things and you're not growing with intention to address those things, then it just kind of creeps up, and you're going to grow one way or the other. It just depends on how it's going to come out in the wash. So yeah. Okay. Well, tell everybody if they want to be able to follow you or get in touch with you. Maybe you can also tell people, I know that you are really about helping people try to figure out how to find a more fulfilling, abundant life. So maybe you can share a little bit about that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I am all about what I call unapologetic abundance. It's really taking care of yourself, and it's not selfish. I mean, the more that you take care of yourself, the more bandwidth you have to help other people. So I'm very active on Instagram, and you can find me at I am Matt Gerlach. My website is mattgerlach.com. I have a weekly blog. There's a quiz to assess how you are living or how you are approaching or living an abundant life. It's a free quiz. And I have a weekly blog that I send out that really chronicles my healing journey. I have a book that I'm going to be coming out with, hopefully in the next year or so.
Woohoo! That's exciting.
Thank you. So I'd invite you to follow me along either by giving me your email address or you're following me on social media. And if there's any entrepreneurs or business owners out there, I am hosting a mastermind group. And this is really focused on healing through limiting beliefs and trauma. I've done remarkable things with my business because I've learned my value. I've grown my revenue to unheard of levels for the kind of business that I have, and set boundaries and really gotten myself to a fulfilling place. And I want to help other entrepreneurs do that. So you can reach out to me on my website or social media there and find out more and schedule a free 30-minute call. Would love to help other entrepreneurs.
Awesome. And we'll link all that up in the show notes. So if y'all want to find it, definitely go check Matt out. Well, Matt, I just want to appreciate and acknowledge you for just coming on the show and really vulnerably practicing that vulnerability, sharing your story, because I think for those listening, there's going to be a lot of things that resonate. And not only just sharing your story, but then also getting to a point in time where you were able to take those steps and ask for help and go on your own healing journey, that now you are helping other people find their way through their own healing journey. And so I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for coming and using your story to also help people that may feel like you did and feel like maybe to get to a more abundant life is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Because I don't know about you, but who doesn't want to live more abundantly? Me, sign me up. So if you're listening, I always give you one takeaway that I just hope that you take from today's. And I hope you realize that, number one, vulnerability is powerful. So go be brave and be vulnerable. Also, it's okay to be selfish. And what I mean by that is it's okay to take care of yourself. And it's okay that if you need help, because guess what? You are worthy. You're deserving to get your needs met. And even though you might not feel it now, there can be hope on the other side of whatever you're going through. So keep going. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.